It has always been there. But will it always be there? It. A reality that is, but isn't, because it is just too hard to talk about honestly. Many have tried, some have succeeded to a degree, but it is still very real. If you have experienced it, then you understand in part. If you have perpetuated, promoted, or profited by it, then you are part of the problem. If you allow it to justify actions that you declare it has wronged you with, you are adding to the problem. What is it? What is this societal challenge that seems to be unsolvable? It is a perspective that was brought here during the age of exploration of this continent. It is a perspective that was adopted by our earliest colonists. It is a perspective on which our founding fathers based our national ideal. It is a perspective that has been challenged countless times, from Jamestown to Selma to Minneapolis. It is a perspective that has always been a part of who we are in America. It is a perspective that has defined us in the past, is defining us in the present, and given the inability or unwillingness to truly discuss it, it will continue to define us into the future. If you are a person of color and have faced it in any manner, you know the challenge of trying to change what most do not and will not understand. If you are white, like me, you face the assumption that we're it, and therefore part of the problem. It isn't unique to our culture, but it has been front and center here for centuries. Preaching has not changed it, though I personally believe that this is a spiritual problem that will never be solved without divine intervention. A civil war highlighted it, but didn't end it. It hasn't been removed by legislation or community activism. Protests have not changed it. It continues because it is real, and we as a nation have never been willing to change. It isn't Republican or Democrat or independent or any other political persuasion. It has been woven into the fabric of this country, and every time someone tries to pull at its threads, our culture begins to unravel. Then, when things quiet down, it is stitched back in place, and our nation continues to be a patchwork quilt of our own design. Sometimes, we even display our sewn together diversity as evidence that it isn't a problem anymore. But it is. Will it ever change? I don't know. And the reason I don't is because there are good people who allow it to influence their lives, often resulting in attitudes or actions that are anything but good. These aren't bad people. They are people who simply don't know how to see their world without it coloring their perspective. I'll share a story and then leave you to your own thoughts about it. We traveled to the South years ago, to the place where my family had its deepest roots. My wife and I had 2 young children who were going to meet their great-grandmother for the first time. My parents were coming, as were my siblings and their families. My father addressed an issue that I didn't know was an issue until he brought it up during the trip. I haven't forgotten his words. We just won't tell Grandma that she is black. If she thinks she's Mexican or Indian, it won't be a big deal. There were only a handful of times in my life where I questioned the words that my father spoke, and even fewer that I actually questioned out loud. I should have then, but I didn't. In an attempt to avoid conflict with his mother, my father marginalized my wife and the very real struggles that she had experienced as a person of color, and I said nothing. It was real then, just as it is now. My father wasn't a prejudiced man. He was an educator who dedicated his life to provide opportunities for children, regardless of what they looked like, where they came from, the language they were born with, or what social class they fit into. And yet, it prompted a perspective and an action that was in no way reflective of the man he was. This is the power it has over our culture. Someday, maybe, someone will find a way to get us to really talk about it. But first, you have to know what it is. Admit that it is. And then we can talk.